Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After you read through the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer Dolphins fans' questions. And we have a fantastic episode, tons of stuff to talk about. Obviously, a fantastic upset victory over the Baltimore Ravens over this, and especially on primetime football. You know, it doesn't get better than that. I wonder what Brian's record is in primetime. Because it's got to be better than Adam Gase and especially Joe Philbin. I think Joe Philbin definitely had a better primetime record than Adam Gase did, but Brian has got, I think he's 2-0 in primetime so far. I'm not, someone has to look that up. But fantastic going over the Ravens. Obviously, we needed that as a fan base, and it's really breathed new life into the season. It just makes watching these games a little bit more exciting. I think we have a lot of stuff to look forward to. I think some of the units and some of the players are getting better, and the play calling is definitely getting better, at least on the defensive side of the football, which I'm excited to talk about that later in the show. But for right now, let's get into the news you need to know about. And this first news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Dolphins add defensive tackle Andrew Billings. Andrew Billings passed through waivers today, but the defensive tackle has already found his next gig. Billings is set to sign with the Miami Dolphins. Billings was a fourth-round pick by the Cincinnati Bengals in 2016, and it didn't take him very long to establish himself as a starter. He started 30 of his 32 games between the 2018 and 2019 seasons, collecting a total of 3.5 sacks, 12 tackles for loss, and 11 quarterback hits. Now the 26-year-old will have a chance to restart his career in Miami. Ian Rappaport reports the veteran will initially start on the practice squad, but he's expected to be promoted to the active roster relatively quickly. So, I don't know, I'm talking so fast, gotta slow down here. Very excited to talk about some of these things on the show, but I think this is a nice move by the Dolphins. They have a lot of depth at that position. It's one of the deeper positions on the team. Christian Wilkins, who's played a little bit more defensive end this year, but he's, especially these last few weeks, he's definitely played more inside than he did at the start of the year. We've seen a lot less of John Jenkins. I don't know if he got hurt or if I'm missing something here. Someone's gonna let me know down in the comment section below what that's about. But we've seen less of him. Zach Sealer is a fantastic player. Who else? I mean, Raekwon Davis, ever since he came back, he's been great as well. So the interior is really nice. It's going to be interesting to see if he does make the active roster and who they kind of sit on the practice squad. But it's just another, I think, good rotational player to have. And it's definitely going to help us on early downs like first and second down. Get a little bit bigger up front. And moving on to the next news story. This next news story comes from Pro Football Rumors. Tua expected to start against the New York Football Jets this upcoming Sunday, which this would be his first game against the Jets, which is weird to think about. He missed the 2 games last year against the Jets. So this will be his first start against them. Obviously, he has the injured index finger and a fracture in his index finger. Thank God. I think we all kind of, exhale and a sigh of relief because nobody wants to see Jacoby Brissett play. I think we can all say that collectively as a Dolphins fan base that it's a no-go when it comes to Jacoby Brissett. I think Tua, and I know people want to sit here and just, kind of drag the man's name through the mud, but he does do a lot of nice things on the football field for this team in particular. I think what he does better than Jacoby especially is get the ball out of his hands quicker. I think he makes quicker decisions. He throws with anticipation. He makes reads quicker. He doesn't stare people down as much as Jacoby, even though Tua did a little bit of that in Sunday's game, which we haven't seen that much of this year. He's definitely gotten better at that. But he just, behind an offensive line where you don't have a run game and you're not going to get that much time back there, Jacoby's play style is to hold on to the football and kind of scramble around, and not to mention the fact that his accuracy is very inconsistent. Tua's accuracy is consistent. He makes quicker reads. He, I think, has a better feel in the pocket, and he throws with anticipation, which Jacoby Brissett does not do. So I think he helps the offensive line and cover up a lot of their warts, and he definitely takes care of the ball better than Jacoby Brissett has, especially this year. And I know he had he had a few not so great interceptions earlier against the Falcons and against Jacksonville. But I think his skill set helps this offensive line look better, in my opinion. And I do think he's better at taking care of the football, just because of how they play. I think Tua, and I don't want to get into his interceptions right now. We'll just move on. But yeah, I think he's obviously a better player. And it's going to help this offense and help this team win more games down the stretch. Which, I think this win, especially against Baltimore, breathe new life into the fan base. You can just tell, when you talk to other Dolphins fans or you just talk about the year, you think about the year, like, oh man, if you look at the schedule, which is what I'm about to talk about right now, and that leads us into this next news story, it just really has breathed life into this season, and you think, hey man, they could definitely, and people forget, they added another game to the schedule. The Dolphins could theoretically still win 10 games. If you look at the rest of the schedule, they have the Jets, Panthers, Giants, Jets again, Saints, Titans, Dolphins, and the Patriots at the end of the year at home. And honestly, the way this defense is playing, and they're going back to their old selves, there's a lot of quarterbacks on here that I think they could take advantage of, like Trevor Siemian, Daniel Jones, who's turnover prone, Zach Wilson / Mike White, whoever plays in that game. Both of those guys, Mike White's just coming off of a 4-interception day, and his best start against the Bengals, he threw 3 interceptions. So there's a lot of bad quarterbacks on the schedule, and obviously they play the Titans and Mac Jones at the end of the year. I think the toughest game left on the schedule is going to be the Carolina Panthers, but the point of what I'm saying is they have a shot to kind of make a run and make, really just kind of brush away some of the bad and kind of turn the season on its head, so to speak. Make the season a little bit better than it has been, and I think they have an opportunity to do that and win some games down the stretch of the year. Will they make the playoffs? Who knows? But will the second half of the season be better than the first half of the season? I think so. I think it's going to be a lot better than the first half. And again, I think their hardest game is going to be the Panthers game, because the Panthers have a really good front seven, and the Dolphins obviously do not have a good offensive front. That's for sure. But defensively, I think they're going to have a really good second half of the year, and we're going to get into that in this next news story. But I just wanted to bring up the schedule when we were talking about Tua and his injury. If he can stay healthy, and this offensive line can just be a little bit better. We've heard Brian Flores talk about Greg Little coming off the practice squad and maybe taking some significant snaps. Again, the Dolphins could still win 10 games. The AFC is very up and down right now with some of these other teams like Cleveland and Las Vegas, who have kind of fallen off the cliff here. I think the Dolphins could definitely and I think at the very least have a better second half of the year is my point. Because again, if you look at the quarterbacks they play, Mike White / Zach Wilson twice, Daniel Jones, Trevor Siemian, Ryan Tannehill, Mac Jones, and Cam Newton / PJ Walker. I think Cam Newton would probably play by then, but it's a favorable schedule. So I just wanted to bring up the schedule as the last news story. But Tua has to stay healthy. So let's move on to the next news story, which is, you all already know, the Dolphins have defeated the Baltimore Ravens 22-10. I think there's some very interesting things that happened in this game. We'll start with the offense really quickly. There's not a lot to talk about, but I wanted to compare Jacoby Brissett and Tua Tagovailoa. They had the same amount of yards, basically, 158 to 156. Tua had 158 yards. Jacoby had 156, but Tua was much more efficient. He was 8 for 13. Jacoby was 11 of 23. The run game continues to be non-existent, with Myles Gaskin leading the rushing attack with 14 carries for 31 yards and an average of 2 yards a carry, which was really, really bad. And Albert Wilson and Isaiah Ford both benefited from busted coverages in this game, both had 80 yards receiving on a very beat-up Dolphins offense. Devontae Parker didn't play. Will Fuller didn't play. Those are other than Jalen Waddle, their two other best receivers especially on the roster. Obviously on the roster. Don't know why I got my brain kind of shut down right there. What else do I have to say about this offense? It was nice to see some explosive plays, even though they were pretty much on busted coverages by the Baltimore Ravens. And nothing to take away from this game. I think the best play of the night offensively was Tua to Waddle on that kind of deep corner route. I think the thing that I was disappointed the most in this game, I knew the offensive line was going to play bad, and obviously they've played bad all year, and they continue to play bad. But the thing that I was kind of upset about is there was just a lot of misreads in this game, especially by Jacoby. There was a big play, and if you go back and watch some of the plays of this game, in the first half, they missed Waddle, Jacoby missed Waddle and Tua missed Waddle once for big plays. I think Waddle would be having a much better rookie season. He's already having a fantastic one. But Waddle was missed on a touchdown in this game and 2 other big-time gains in this game. The quarterbacks just stared down Mike Gesicki, who got a ton of targets, but barely, I don't even think he got a catch in this game. Waddle, I don't know what, that was, I think, the most frustrating thing about this game is like, man, we had some big play. This game should have actually been a bigger blowout if the quarterback play was a little bit better. Mostly it was by Jacoby. Tua missed Waddle once, but this goes back to what I think the best play of the game was, where it looked like, honestly, you know what's funny is Tua actually had the best protection he's probably had all year against the Ravens, where he kind of looked the safety off. He went through, he didn't stare anybody down. He went through all of his reads and delivered a beautiful throw down the field to Jalen Waddle. I think that was probably the best play by our offense as a unit all year. But yeah, offensively, the thing that I think frustrated me the most is Waddle just was consistently missed a lot in this game. I wish we would have hit him on some of those bigger plays. And I think this game would have been even more of a blowout than it was, because, it sucks because this offensive line is so horrid that I think it's affecting the way that the quarterbacks play, not Jacoby, but Tua. He knows he has to get the ball out, and you can't really go to your second and third read behind this offensive line unless you do it very quickly, because not only do you have to read the field, but you have to deliver an accurate ball. And if you guys go back and look at the busted play by Albert Wilson, if Jacoby was in when that happened, he would not have gotten the ball off to Albert Wilson. The only reason that Tua hit Albert Wilson is because he has a very quick release, because Calais Campbell, I believe, was coming in free on that play and just destroyed Tua on that. If you guys go back and look at that play, if Jacoby was in at that point, that I'm telling you guys right now, that ball would have been a strip sack fumble or would have been incomplete. But yeah, I think that I don't know what to say positively about this offense right now. I think the best players on this offense, I think, is Waddle, Gesicki, and Tua. I think those are the 3 best players on the offense, and it's not even close. Austin Jackson continues to struggle. Eichenberg had a not-so-great game, and really nobody on the offensive line except Robert Hunt had a respectable game. And this goes in, to I think the biggest news story and the biggest thing I really want to talk about is defensively. And I want to say this at the top here, is that Brian Flores, if he wasn't this head coach, and there's been a lot of talk about him leaving and getting fired, but if he wasn't the head coach of this team, by the way, he's 8-3 in November, and I think, to be honest with you, that shows that his teams get better as the year goes on, obviously. But back to my original point, he's actually now 9-3 because of this win. If Brian Flores, let's say Adam Gase, Joe Philbin, pick a name out of the coaching carousel that this franchise has gone through, none of them would win this game. The only reason we won this game was because of scheme. Obviously, it was an absurd amount of blitzing, but it was Josh Boyer and Brian Flores. If Brian Flores is not the head coach of this team, they do not beat the Baltimore Ravens. And I think that's the biggest thing I take away from this game. They have to fix this offense. This defense is very good and it's very young. There's a lot of things to like on this defense. Brandon Jones, Javon Holland, Van Ginkel, he's terrible in coverage, but he's a very good pass rusher. Jalen Phillips is playing better and better as the year goes on. I think I mentioned Holland already. Obviously, X and Byron. I think Byron's having a fantastic year. X has gotten better these last 2 weeks. I think he's had his best games back-to-back. The entire defense is really starting to come together. We're getting more aggressive because the defense has to carry us to wins, and they did in this game. They went back to what they did last year, which is get after the quarterback, give the offenses crazy looks with your front seven. And, we haven't seen that front that much other than the Houston Texans game and the Baltimore Ravens game. And I'm very happy that they went back to it. But my point is that it's just really what won this game was obviously on defense, but it was scheme and it was coaching that I think was the brightest spot of this game. And then obviously a lot of the good young talent that this team has, especially defensively, that really shined in this game. But it made me happy. It made me happy to see B-Flow kind of have a game where it's like he put a stamp on it again, because we haven't really had that this year. We've had some bad coaching moments. And I'm not, and it's good to see him kind of get it back. And he's such a good, and we sit here and hate on Chris Greer, and I think he deserves it because he's done a terrible job of building an offense around a young quarterback. But defensively, we've picked some good players, and I think they have a lot of those guys have bright. I mean, Christian Wilkins. People forget. I mean, Christian Wilkins, who's a good player, Holland, Brandon Jones, Jerome Baker, who had a bounce back game in this game, Van Ginkel, Phillips. All of those are Chris Greer picks. All of those guys are good players. Every single one of them. Byron Jones, Chris got here. Xavier Howard, that's a draft pick by Chris Greer. He hasn't done it's not been great, but if you compare his stint to Jeff Ireland's stint, it's been much better. Or Dennis Hickey's stint, who was a very short time, or Mike Tannenbaum or Adam Gase when he was over here drafting players. It's better in terms of drafting. And I guess if you want to take Xavier Howard off of that, because he technically was in the Tannenbaum era, but not technically, he was. So if you just want to count Holland, Jones, Wilkins, Raekwon Davis, who's a good player, there's a lot of good defensive players on that side of the ball that are young and going to be really good. And Jalen Phillips, like I said, man, and Javon Holland is he's going to be really good. Some of the plays he made in this game were, not only was he getting pressure on the quarterback, great tackling, great player recognition. There was a fantastic play where Holland moved Jerome Baker from one side of the field to the other. This is a rookie safety we're talking about. Moved Jerome Baker down to the line of scrimmage and told him to blitz and manned up the guy that Jerome Baker was supposed to be on. And then Jerome Baker came in free on the blitz. It was just just Javon Holland. And, Brian Flores said he was, wise beyond his years. He really is, dude. He's going to be not only is he great speed, great cover guy, great open field tackler, but he's also very smart. And, he started off the game with a great play with he came across the field and Lamar Jackson was throwing a crosser to, I think, Duvernay, or maybe it was to Marquise Brown, I can't remember. And he also laid a big hit on Duvernay earlier in the game. But anyway, to come across all the way across the field on a crosser and knock the ball out of his hands. And he had a similar play against Houston. And he had a great game against Houston. And it's honestly, and I know I don't want to sound, I'm never happy when people get hurt, but when McCourty got hurt, it's really opened up for these young safeties to come to really show what they have, and they've taken full advantage of it. But yeah, defensively, I like where this team, I think they're going to have a good defense for the next 2 or 3 years because everybody's so young. They're 2 rookie safeties, a really young front 7 when you think about Jerome Baker, who's locked up. Obviously, Roberts is a little bit older. Maybe they look into that. I've talked about that before. I think to really take away some of the responsibility from Van Ginkel and just relegate him to a pass rusher, because if they do that, Van Ginkel is fantastic. But anytime he has to draw back in coverage, it's you got to cover your eyes. But if they find someone to kind of play that Van Ginkel, Kyle Van Noy role, and who can drop back in coverage and is a half decent blitzer as a linebacker, then this defense is going to be fantastic. It's going to go to even greater heights, in my opinion. And maybe they have to do something about it, Landon Roberts. I don't know. But the point is defensively, between Brian Flores and his scheme, the way he's developed these guys, they're all heading in the right direction, and they're going to be very good for, I think. And I know the stats haven't been favorable for them early in the year, but if you look at the amount of time that they've been on the field and the plays, which they lead the league in, that offenses have taken snaps against them, the next team, they're even worse than teams like the Jets. It's ridiculous the amount of snaps that this defense has had to be out there. Or, I don't even know. Well, you guys know what I'm saying. The amount of times that opposing offenses have taken snaps against their defense is just it's not a sustainable thing. But anyway, my point is, young defense, fantastic. Really happy for Brian Flores to kind of go back to his roots and show why he's a good head coach. And hopefully we can go on a run here, because I do think Brian is still a good head. I still stand by Brian Flores. I really, really, really do. I love his scheme. I love the way he coaches defensive football. And I know Boyer has done it. And by the way, Josh has done a fantastic... He's one of the best play callers we've had in so long, dude. Seriously. And he's doing a fantastic job as well. So, great win. It felt great watching this game. And I don't know why I paused right there, but yeah, just a great win. Haven't had a win like this in a long time. Dating back since obviously last year, and even last year we kind of left on a bad note. But I think this team is going. If I say one more time, you guys can just hit me in the face. But yeah, I think we're heading in the right direction, and I'm excited to see this defense. And I said again. To go against some kind of poor quarterbacks for the rest of the year, because I think they have a chance to really just kind of have a dominant second half of the year. So let's get into the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. And I know I said I'm going to separate the fan, and I am. But this week we're just gonna stick with the podcast as well. This first question comes from SM. He says, for the past 2 seasons, we were a rebuilding team on the way up. Do you think the flaws of our past, along with the season, will scare away top-level free agents moving forward? No, I don't think that. I think this offensive line is just kind of, it's like this big rock in our way that it's just ruining everything. It's like a virus. It's a sickness that this team has to get rid of. Because it's affecting the rest of the team to a degree that is obviously not sustainable, definitely not a winning formula in the National Football League. They have to figure out what they're going to do with this offensive line. And if they figure that out, then this team is going to be a fantastic team, which they should have been this year, but they didn't fix the offensive line. The additions of Eichenberg and, a lot of these young offensive linemen going a year 2, I think we all thought, at least I did, that they would get a little bit better than they, and then just, Austin Jackson has gotten worse. Solomon Kidley has gotten worse. A lot of you, and I hope we haven't even really seen him play this year, which is weird. But he went from, oh my God, this guy's got a future in this league, to he doesn't even play anymore. So there's a lot of issues with this offensive line. It is not just bad, it is really bad. It is bad as it can get. It's as bad as it can get, guys. This offensive line, to average 2 yards a carry in the NFL, and not give your quarterbacks any time to throw the football on a consistent basis. And again, they did this against Houston, the worst defense in the National Football League, especially because of in terms of talent. Their front has nobody on it. And I'm sorry if you guys hear people yell in the background. There's nothing I can, unless, there's nothing really I can do about that. But anyway, what was I saying defensively? The offensive front is just atrocious as him. I hate when people keep saying, oh, this team is years away. No, it's not. It just fix the offensive line, and you're fine. That's what they have to do. I don't... And I think they're going to have to make some decisions on receiver, obviously, because Devontae Parker and Will Fuller are just... They're not reliable, and they're going to have to, figure out replacements for those two. But other than that, really all of the issues with an offense, the only issue on defense that I think needs to be addressed is that Kyle Van Noy role, where we'll call it the Joker linebacker spot, where they kind of have to do it all. Van Ginkel is not good in coverage at all. He's not good at all in coverage. They have to find someone else to... And Duke Riley, who's come in and has been and really taken the pressure off Van Ginkel and kind of done that job, has done a good job. And Van Ginkel has been allowed to do what he's really good at, which is get after the quarterback. And I think Duke Riley's done a good job in that role. But they have to figure out a long-term solution for that spot. This next question comes from Steve. He says, I would like to know what you think of Tua getting named Player of the Game by Fox. To me, someone on defense earned that a lot more than Tua. I agree, but it's the quarterback thing. If I had to give someone the Player of the Game, I would give it to Javon Holland, for sure. I think he was fantastic in that game. But I agree. I think it should have been Holland, Steve. This next question comes from Brandon. He says, everybody picks on Eichenberg, or however you spell his name, but he recovered 2 fumbles and one that came at the end of the game. Who do you think is the worst offensive lineman that we have right now? Well, I don't think it's... Yes, he came out clutch with those fumbles, but it's not something I want an offensive lineman to be known for. Let's just put it that way. But who's the worst offensive lineman we have? It's not even close. It's Austin Jackson. It's every week he makes a play that is just like you shake your head. Like what was that? He can't, whether it's against the Jaguars and he lets Josh Allen pretty much come in free on 4th and 1, and that's pretty much what won the Jaguars that game. He's had holding calls that have ruined drives. And in this game, he had like a false start and a bad holding call in this game, I believe. And it's just every game with him. Something he can't block in the run game. He's not a great pass protector. And he commits the most penalties on the team. So I'm going to have to go with Austin Jackson on that one. This next question comes from Eric. He says, I would like to apologize to Albert Wilson for my comments last week. A hurt Tua is a lot better than a healthy Brissett. Baker Mayfield is playing with a torn labrum. I know Tua can play with a hurt hand, and that game proved it. So what's up with that decision? I don't know, to answer your question, Ethan. I don't want to get into the whole lip-reading Elandon Roberts fiasco and some of that stuff that we saw over the weekend after the Houston Texans game. I don't really know what the thought process was with that. And Jacoby Brissett played a very bad first half. And I mentioned that earlier in the game where he had Jalen Waddle for big plays, and he just didn't make the reads that he had to. Not to mention the fact that he missed some wide open receivers and his accuracy was bad. He was skipping balls that entire first half. Anyway, the point is Jacoby Brissett is bad. What was the question, Eric? Good Lord. What was up with the decision? I don't know. I don't really know what Brian. The whole thing was that Tua can throw deep, and then he throws deep better than Jacoby Brissett does in that game where he threw a beautiful ball to Albert Wilson. By the way, like I said earlier in the video, he was literally there. Calais Cable came in free, and had a free lane to the quarterback. And if that was Jacoby Brissett, I'm telling you guys right now, he does not make that throw to Albert Wilson. And he threw the ball better than Jacoby did, and he threw it better down the field. So I don't really know what Brian was thinking with that, but I'm glad that Tua came in and did what he did. But anyway, I'm not sure. I can't really answer what was up with that decision. I don't know. And yes, a hurt Tua is better than a healthy Jacoby. To answer your question, Eric. This next question comes from Steve, and it's I think a question, Eric, that we're all wondering. This next question comes from Steve. He says it's as if a switch was turned on this defense. Out of nowhere, the last 2 weeks, this defense is starting to play to last year's form. What do you think they weren't keeping? Why do you think they weren't keeping 7 guys near the line and using in and out blitzing from the start of the season? And if they had, do you think their team's record might be flipped at this point? I don't know if it would have been flipped. I think we definitely would have beat the Jags and Colts. That's for sure. And it would have been, whatever, I don't know. I'm not doing the math right now on that. We would have had, okay, let's say we've been running this defense. I know for a fact we would have had those 2 games. We'd be 5 and 5 right now, right? So yeah, we'd be 5 and 5 right now. Is there any other games? I'm trying to think of the other games that we lost. We wouldn't have beat Buffalo either time, unfortunately. Maybe we would have beat them on the road if we blitzed a little bit more in that second half, but I'm not really sure because that's when the defense kind of started to come back. We did use that front against them a few times, not as much as we did against Houston. I'm not going to say we would have beat Buffalo. We definitely wouldn't have beat Tampa. I think maybe if we blitzed Tampa, we would have won. I don't know. See, now I'm starting to think things because Tom. I don't know. I don't think. Let's just say we would have been 5 and 5. I definitely think we would have beat the Colts or Jags though. And it does, I talked about this while the season was going on, like why weren't we going back to some of that stuff and why weren't we as aggressive as we were a year ago? And I really do think it's because the coaching staff thought we would be better on offense, and I think they thought that that maybe I think that's probably the biggest thing is we weren't going to be as inept as we have been on offense because it's been really bad, and they really do. The defense really does have to win and cause havoc and make splash plays to win us games. This next question comes from KC Fanatic. He says, I've heard it said we have the talent on our offensive line. All we need to do is replace Austin Jackson with Saul McKinley. Your thoughts? P.S. It feels good to beat the Ravens. They had our number. It does feel great to beat the Baltimore Ravens. That's another thing. Not only was this on primetime, but we actually beat the Baltimore Ravens, which was awesome. So the question is, should we replace Austin Jackson with Saul McKinley? Yes, I do think we should do that. I really, really do. I think the thing that Saul McKinley has struggled with over his tenure with the Dolphins is him being able to be more of an athletic guard, which pulling in the run game, stuff like that is what he really struggles with. But we don't do that anyway. So yeah, put Saul McKinley in a guard. And Casey, you said, I've heard we said we have the talent on our offensive line. All we need to do is replace Austin Jackson. No, that is not true. That is definitely not true. Honestly, I don't know what Liam has. Like, obviously, Liam is a young player, and he's had ups and downs this year. But the Dolphins really need to replace the two tackle positions and replace Austin Jackson at guard. And if that moves, and I'm actually totally fine if they move Robert Hunt to right tackle and then just replace him with two new guards. And if they have to, go out and get a new center. But I think the most important thing they have to do this offseason is secure the tackle positions and revamp the offensive line is the most important thing. This next question comes from Richard. He says, Albert Wilson, sorry. Let me restart your question, Richard. Albert Wilson finally had one of his best games. It's time to cut Preston Williams. Lamar Jackson did look confused, and he was getting rid of the ball quickly. The refs tried to keep the Ravens in this game, but couldn't. Go Fins. Yeah, that's another thing that I forgot to mention when we were talking about the defense, is they did confuse Lamar Jackson, and they did a fantastic job of shutting down the run game, because this game was close. This was a one-possession game throughout the entire game, and they could not run the football with any consistency. I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm messing up my words here. And the Lamar Jackson runs that are so famous were non-existent in this game. And every time they ran one of them, it was like a negative play for them. It was fantastic, just a fantastic performance defensively. And the defense it was well coached and well prepared, and they did do a fantastic job of confusing him. What was the question though, Richard? Yes, I think it was more of a statement. Albert Wilson had a great game. Preston Williams, Lamar, I don't know if Preston should be cut. But yeah, defensively great. Albert Wilson was good as well. This next question comes from the Gamer. He says, I think we need to draft a running back earlier this year. Do you agree? I would love to see us address the offensive line in free agency. I don't want to go through a year with growing pains with another offensive line. I would like them to be... And again, we have a ton of cap space this upcoming season. I would like to get some veteran offensive line talent here to help too. I don't think, and I think it would be stupid to go out and get him rookie offensive lineman. I really do, and I think that's one of the biggest things that's hurt his development so far. And it was so stupid by this franchise to surround him with young players like they did on the offense. They should have definitely added more veteran talent at that position than they did, especially on the offensive line. Excuse me, I'm sorry guys, I've lost my place. Oh, that question came from the Gamer. He says, do we draft a running back earlier this year? Yes, and I think we should address the skill positions in the draft, if that's what they want to do. But if they want to address the offensive line, do that through free agency. This next question comes from Brandon. He says, we held the Ravens offense to 10 points. What do you think we did differently outside of blitzing more? I think one of the things that has definitely helped is... I think, honestly, the team is gelling together better. I think the return of a healthy Raekwon Davis has helped the run defense. I think Jerome Baker is finally getting out of his funk, which really helps in the run game. I think the Duke Riley, him playing that kind of joker linebacker role, he's done a fantastic job, especially in the run game. He's helping us set the edge. He's a little bit more physical. He's better in coverage than Van Ginkel. I think a lot of those things have helped. I think the more aggressive play calling has helped because, again, you guys got to remember, we were getting teams into third down. It's not like the run game has been gashing us all year. We've had a terrible third down efficiency. And again, the blitzing has helped that a lot in confusing offenses and in pass protection schemes and quarterbacks to get us off the field on third down. So I think it's a combination of all of those things, Brandon, to answer your question. This next question comes from SM. He says, why does it take the Miami coaches so long to know the strengths and weaknesses of this team? Because I think they thought, I think they didn't want a repeat of last year. And it's like, man, we really have pretty much the same issues we did last year. And that's kind of a terrible thing to admit to yourself. It's like, you're supposed to get better year in, year out. And maybe this team makes a great second-year run. I think they definitely have gotten better. They're faster than they were a year ago on the defensive side of the ball. I like their front seven more than what they had a year ago. I think the secondary is better than what they had a year ago. I like Holland and Brandon Jones and what they've done. So I think defensively they're going in the right direction. Offensively, obviously they're still where they were, and they're a little bit worse than they were a year ago, obviously. And they need to. And the loss of Eric Flowers was a bigger loss than I think a lot of people would have thought. And yeah, I've just lost my place again in the comments section. Where are we? We just answered Brandon's question. We answered SM's question about why does it take the coaches so long. This next question comes from Brandon. He says, how do you think Tua felt watching his head coach pick him over Brissett on national TV? Do you think this will boost his confidence? I think that game will boost his confidence for sure. And hopefully we can, and again, it's not Tua's fault. It's just atrocious offensive line that cannot run the football. I feel bad for Myles Gaskin too, man. I've said this in the past, but good lord, this man takes way too many big hits. This next question comes from Chip. He says, "Hey Skaggs, as far as this O-line, I left up to you. If left up to you, I'm sorry, I can't read." He says, "Hey Skaggs, as far as this O-line, if left up to you, would you start from scratch or keep or one or two or build in free agency? Who would you make?" Okay, well he kind of miswrote this. He says, "Would you make?" No, he didn't. I just messed it up again. "Would you make any major changes on defense?" I kind of talked about it earlier in the show. I would not make any major changes on defense. I would definitely look for that joker player that has to do a lot of different things. I think that I don't know if Duke Riley is the long-term answer for that, but I would probably go out and get someone, and it's crazy because this defense could have had Michael Parsons. I love Waddle, but they could have definitely traded up to maybe get him. But I still like this draft class. Waddle, Phillips, and Holland have all definitely looked like they're going to be really good players, especially Holland and Waddle. And I think Phillips is heading in that direction as well. He's looked really good these last few weeks. So this draft class is actually pretty dang good. But it's crazy that we picked Waddle and then two defensive players. And I think that kind of shows on game days where it's like, man, we just needed more assets on the offensive side of the ball, especially veteran assets. But would I make any major changes defensively? No, not only other than the Joker thing, that kind of Joker linebacker spot is the only thing I would change. And yes, I think not from scratch. I would keep Robert Hunt. And then, yeah, everybody else is pretty much fair game at that point. To answer your question, Chip. This next question comes from Curtis. He says, "We got another dub. Hey, Skaggs, can you please rate our team as you see it now?" I think our defense, I don't know how to, I think our defense is fantastic. I like the play calling. I like some of our young players, I think, are starting to kind of, especially Holland, is really starting to kind of get into a groove halfway through the season. Our offense is an F. I don't. There's just nothing we do well offensively, and that's just not good. This next question comes from Brandon. Section 121, row 21, seat 19. I was there at the game. The best part was watching X return the fumble. If our defense ran more blitzes earlier in the year, do you think the record is different? Absolutely. I definitely think so. This next question comes from Mark. He says, the defense won us this game. Why is the offense holding us back? Is it coaching, execution, or it's the players? It's not even, it would take a blind man not to say it's not the players. This offensive line, when you average 2 yards a carry, and it's funny that people like Omar Kelly's like, this offensive line can run the ball. No, it cannot run the football. This offensive line might as well be a group of toddlers because they can't block anybody. It's amazing how bad they are sometimes at not only just blocking, but executing pass schemes in terms of like passing off stunts. We have to be the worst offensive line in the last 2 years in passing off stunts. We're terrible. So it's just not good. Anywhere you look on the offensive line, it's just really, really, really bad. So to answer your question, I don't know why I just paused so far. I just keep losing my place. So is it execution? It's the players. He says, I seen firsthand the O-line for sure is inconsistent, but so is quarterback play, and the running game and wide receivers is the entire offense. What do you change, or what would you suggest? I would suggest, I don't know, I think I would put Kinley back into the lineup. And, this is another question right here that I would have to look into. that we'll get to in a second. But yeah, I think I wouldn't blame it so much on the quarterbacks. You can tell they don't. You can tell sometimes that they don't trust the offensive line by the way that they read the field, especially Tua. Because when he is protected, he does go through his progressions. But when pressure and he thinks he feels it, it kind of gets a little squirrely with some of his reads. And we kind of saw that in this game, especially with Jacoby, who, again, like I said, he missed Waddle for a touchdown. He had a big play to Waddle early in the game that he missed. And then Tua missed Waddle one time on a kind of like a deep corner route that Waddle was wide open. And the play where he threw to Mike Gesicki, it was one of the first drives where Tua came in. It was third down, and he threw to Mike Gesicki when he was double teamed, like on an out route. Go back and look at that play and watch Jalen Waddle, who is just literally wide open. And it's stuff like that this offense cannot leave on the field. And they consistently do. And you can see to his head, he never looks over to Waddle. So that has to be better in terms of the quarterback play. But the offensive line is really, honestly, crippling us in a lot of different ways. And what do I suggest? They should have done something at the trade deadline. That's what they should have done. Instead of worrying about Deshaun Watson the entire time, they should have actually tried to go out and get someone on the offensive line. This question comes from the Gamer. He says, I see Austin Jackson at a high grade this week, according to PFF. Thoughts? I have to look this up, the Gamer, because maybe I'm crazy. Sorry, guys. I don't know why I'm saying this. This is why we need a video experience where you guys can see me do this instead of. Okay, so I'm on the PFF page right now. So, Austin Jackson is tied in penalties for offensive linemen. He's 7th in the NFL, so that's not great. His overall grade is a 47.3. And I don't know what his grade was for this past. Let me look this up. Can I look this up? I think I have to have a membership to see games wise. But yeah. In terms of this, he's only allowed a sack this year, which if there's anything positive, there's that, and that's hard to believe that he's only allowed one sack. But he's not a good run. The run game is the biggest thing with this team. It's if they could find, it would help the offensive line so much if they could, and that's the thing that kills them so bad is they cannot run the ball, dude. And if they could just run the ball, it would help this offensive line in pass protection. But they can't. I just read you guys they average 2 yards a carry against the Ravens. Okay, they have a good front. They have a big front. And they have a good middle linebacker in Patrick Queen. But they did the same thing against Houston. So if this isn't, this is a very obviously a problem that they just can't fix unless you change the players up front. This next question comes from JackPack18. He says, defense played lights out, but offense is still putrid. Too many penalties and no run game, or blocking in general. Does Flo keep these clowns in, or do they get fired this offseason, like every other offensive coordinator of his tenure? Who's gonna want to work for Flo knowing he's on the hot seat, which definitely will be when they don't make the playoffs? I don't know. I don't want to presume things, Jackpack, in terms of how bad will it? I think this team's gonna have a really good second half of the year, and the dude has a 9-3 record in November, which is really good. But and I think that kind of illustrates his teams do get better as the year goes on. It happened in 2019. It happened in 2022. People forget about that, and it's happening this year. We're on a 2-game win streak here, but it's this offense. I think, honestly, I wouldn't fire, and I know people are going to freak out when I say this. I would not fire this offense. The first thing I would think about is, Chris Greer, you suck, and maybe I think that's the first guy I look to fire. Because if he's not going to fix this offensive line, we need someone else to do it. So, that's one, I think the thing that I would okay, this is what needs to change, is the offensive line for sure. And Chris Greer, to be honest with you. Get Chris out of here. Get someone in here who's going to build an offensive line. Maybe you get a new offensive line coach in here, but getting another offensive coordinator in here, you know what? Here's one thing I will say. There's only one way from here, and that's up. So if they have to go get another offensive coordinator, fine, go do it. But it better be somebody who has a decent track record with, maybe to go get Bill O'Brien or someone like that who is trying to find their way back into the league. But the first two things I would think about is this offensive line and the GM position for sure. This next question comes from Steve. He says, a win is a win, and the defensive performance was outstanding, but the offense is absolutely atrocious. If not for just flat-out blown coverages, the 50-yard play to Ford doesn't happen, and the 60-yard play to Wilson does not happen. If the Ravens don't shoot themselves in the foot on these two plays, Miami's offense looks as stagnant as it has all season prior to this game. Is it what it is, and a win is a win, but the offense is still horrible? What are your thoughts? I mean, we've talked about that through this entire show. Steve is just, yes, the offense is as bad. If they need to, and I cannot, I don't know what they do. I think they have to continue to throw the ball, and the short pass game has to be an extension of the run game, because the offense, and if they want better pass protection, then they're going to have to find a run game, which they cannot do. So I don't know what the solution is other than to get a new offensive line. And I know what people are going to say when I said Bill O'Brien. They're going to be like, is that the dumbest thing ever? No, it's not. Bill O'Brien, he's been a good coach throughout his career. It's just, maybe not such a good GM and maybe not a good head coach. But as an offensive coordinator, he's definitely not that bad. And what I will say is, like I said before, is it's like, well, you don't want to change this. Well, dude, here's the thing. It's only up from here. Because you cannot play worse as an offense. You would actually have to try to play worse. It's like, dude, sometimes it's like, man, are we just trying to throw this game away offensively? That's how bad the blocking has been at times this year. This question comes from Brandon again. He says, are you excited as I am about this win? Absolutely. This win was fantastic. This is another question from Curtis. He says, what do you think of turning Robert Hunt into a tight end? That play was definitely insane. And he's honestly the best offensive lineman we have, that's for sure. And you know what? I think that's it for the questions, ladies and gentlemen. I'm gonna Google something for you guys, okay? And you guys can stay for this or not, but that's pretty much the end of this video. I'm literally gonna drop this mic. I apologize, everybody. I think he's been running all over the place this entire video. But I'm gonna look up Robert Hunt's PFF grade. And I want to compare it to Austin Jackson's 47. Because either I'm blind or something else is going on here. Okay, Robert Hunt has a 60 compared to Austin Jackson's 47.7. So I guess that kind of confirms what I've been seeing. Anyway, and again, I don't really put too much to compare, which is kind of crazy. Robert Hunt has 6 penalties, which is tied for 7th with Austin Jackson, which I did not know. He has allowed 2 sacks at the guard position, which is tied for 21st in the league. So you can take that with. I did not know Robert Hunt's. Well, I guess he had the illegal touching call this past week, but it doesn't seem like he has that many penalties this year. Maybe I'm crazy. It seems like Austin Jackson has way more. But they're tied. But yeah, he has a much better PFF grade, if that means anything to you people. Anyway, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed the pod. I don't have much else to say except this. I think we're, like I brought up with the schedule, I think the defense is getting better. They have to, I honestly think they need to just try something different offensively where this isn't working. Put Greg Little in the game. Put him in at guard. Put Robert Hunt at guard. Maybe move Jesse Davis back inside. I don't know what they need to do, but they need to figure it out. And honestly, Austin Jackson, maybe put him back at left tackle and then move someone else inside. Maybe put Kinley back in or something like that because it just isn't working. They need to revamp the offensive line. For a minute there, it looked like, oh my God, against Jacksonville where they kind of shook it up a lot. Where it's like, oh my God, maybe it's getting better. And then it's like, oh my God, no, it definitely isn't. So they need to figure that out. I would try, again, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again. Well, that's kind of what this team is doing right now. They need to, Greg Little just got here not too long ago, so maybe now it's time to kind of get him going a little bit. They're gonna have to figure it out. Greg Little is a former second-round pick. Maybe he can bring something to this offensive line. So that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed. I think this second half, excuse me, I had to burp. I almost said fart. But anyway, I think the second half of the season, is going to be better than the first half, which is good. And I think this win is definitely breathed a new air into the season. That's for sure. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.